Hey guys, welcome to Module 4. We have a few things for this week to do. We're going to spend most of the time talking about QuickBooks assignment. Well, I'll still try to keep it pretty short. Let's see, you have a discussion and engagement worth 18 points. Again, I can't emphasize enough that if you go ahead and do these are the discussion questions, answer 2 students for each discussion question thread, get those 18 points, that can really help you. If you're struggling in other areas, don't make, another area bring you down too. Let this area help bring you up. You also got to do, a quiz, right? So the quiz is the multiple choice in Chapter 4. So for the multiple choice, just make sure that you put the number and then A, B, C, or D. To save you time, make your life easier, you don't have to write anything out. However, if you want additional information later on, maybe you have a question about one of the answers, I may require you to send me your calculation so that I can see it, but you don't have to do that for the initial submission. Okay, so then we have the quiz, and then we'll go back to QuickBooks, and then you have the Cengage Now assignment due Sunday. So make sure you get these things in on time. The QuickBooks assignment is Chapter 6 and 7. Chapter 6 is fixed assets, long-term assets, and Chapter 7 is paying employees. Now, with the same as with previous weeks, you're given the trial balance that you need to match to, and you need to provide this to me in Excel, as well as the transaction detail. If your previous chapters 1 through 5, if any of those don't match, if the trial balance doesn't match the case trial balance and those previous chapters, you're not going to get this to match. This is, a carry forward of previous chapters, and so if there's something wrong, if the beginning checking was off in Chapter 5, then it's going to be off in Chapter 6. So you've got to go back. And one of the things I kind of been trying to tell the students is that, there's really no shortcut. Go through, work through the chapters. That's how I do it when I'm working with these problems. I first work through the chapter, see the way that the authors are doing things, and then I go and I look at the case and work the case to make sure that I understand it to help you with it. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm following my own advice. So you're going to need to do that. You need to go through the chapter first. And whenever you're doing the work in the chapter, you can go back and you can move around and you can say, well, I'm having trouble in the fixed assets. You can go back and remind yourself how you did the work in the chapter. And then that way, when you switch back over to the case, you say, well, okay, well, it says to add a fixed asset. How did I add a fixed asset before? I want to do the same thing. Here in the very first part, it says to add 3 new fixed asset accounts, an equipment account, an original cost account, which is a sub-account of the equipment account, and then an accumulated depreciation account. So make sure that you add those. The way I like to add accounts is I go to the chart of accounts and add an account from there. There's different ways you can do it, but that's kind of the way I've been doing it. Also, if you did something wrong, for example, when I was working on the investments, I accidentally put the wrong date in, but I'd already saved it and everything. I said, oh, I need to go fix that date. Well, I went to the chart of accounts and I drilled down. You can do this different ways. There's a bunch of different ways you can do this. You can go to the trial balance, you can go to the transaction detail, but those are different reports that you have to run. I just thought it was simpler to go straight to the chart of accounts. When I went to view the register, it opened up all the different things that were happening, and then I could just go in here, click on this, and change the date for the investment with E-Trade, and I found it to be faster. So I like using the chart of accounts to get to things quicker, and if you have an error and you want to correct it, I like going to the chart of accounts. Chapter 7 is payroll. And there's a couple of things I want to tell you about that to help you keep you from getting frustrated. First of all, you really need to go through and work through the chapter first, because that's going to save you a lot of time. I mean, the thing about QuickBooks, about Intuit, the company, is that they're always trying to sell you, they're trying to sell you one-up services. So they're going to try to do that with payroll. Now, we're students, so we're not even interested in that, but the system doesn't know that. So let me just show you a couple of things. So when I went into workers and employees, what I found first was that when I went to try to add an employee, it took me to a different screen, and it asked me if I, had paid any employees this year. I didn't really know what to do, so I just said, okay, yes, I did. And I just went through. I clicked through whatever I needed to get back to the point where I could get to this point where I click on add an employee. Now, when you go to add an employee, right, it looks a little bit different from the textbook. Actually, quite a bit different from the textbook. But don't worry, it's not going to be a big problem. So let's say we want to add Betsy Ross, right? So let's go ahead and do Betsy. All right, Betsy Ross. Ask for her email. I'm pretty sure that back in the revolutionary days of the United States or America, they didn't have emails back then. So we'll just skip that for now, and we'll uncheck this stuff to invite the employee. There's no reason to do that. Now, ask a bunch of things about W-4, how often we pay Betsy, how much do we pay Betsy, a bunch of other things. And we're just going to skip through all this. So we'll just go down to done. Of course, it says, well, we have all the stuff that we need from you, right? Now we'll just finish that later. All we care about now is getting the information in from the chapter, so we kind of get a feel for how payroll works. If you were a real business, you would obviously have all that information, but we don't. So now we have Ben and Betsy. So we have the two employees here, and it has an indicator saying, hey, you're missing a lot of information. That's fine. For the chapter, we're just going to do some journal entries and do some payments that way. When you make sure when you're working through the textbook, through the chapter itself, you see where the different numbers came from in the information. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot more difficult for you. So let's go ahead and finish it up here. Make sure you get to that trial balance that equals chapter 6 and chapter 7, so you can move forward to chapter 8, 9, and 10.